Sales is power because it teaches an unsupported man how reality actually chooses winners. Not the loudest, not the most loyal, not the man with the most pain. The man who can turn a problem into value, value into proof, and proof into money. Most men avoid sales because rejection feels like humiliation. But that is the training. Every no shows you where your offer is weak, where your words are unclear, where your proof is missing, and where your need for approval is still controlling you. If you cannot sell, you remain dependent on someone else choosing you, an employer, a client, a family member, a gatekeeper, a room that may never open. But do not confuse sales with begging, manipulation, or performance. Real sales is disciplined perception. You learn what people need, what they fear, what they ignore, and what they will pay to solve. That is where market power begins. And this is not theory. Modern buyers are drowning in information. Harvard Business Review described the modern business buyer as overloaded with information, spending only about 17% of the purchase process talking to potential suppliers. Gartner found that many business buyers now turn to sales reps to validate artificial intelligence-generated insights. Meaning the valuable seller is no longer just a man who talks more. He is the man who reduces confusion. He lowers risk. He creates certainty where everyone else creates noise. This is why sales feels humiliating to the ambitious man. It does not attack his skill first. It attacks his identity. When you work alone, you can still protect the fantasy. You can tell yourself you are talented. You can tell yourself your family cannot see your vision. You can tell yourself your friends are too small to understand what you are building. You can believe society ignores you because society is blind. But sales removes imagination. Sales gives you a verdict. Reply or silence. Interest or indifference, payment or excuse, commitment or delay. That is why most men avoid it. They say they hate sales because it feels fake. No, they hate sales because it exposes where they are still unproven. And Machiavelli understood this better than most modern men. In The Prince, he wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few really know what you are." This is not only politics, this is the market. The market cannot see your private suffering. It cannot see your imagined future. It cannot see the version of you that exists only in your head. It sees signals, proof, offer, clarity, results. If those signals are weak, your ambition is treated like noise. That is the brutal law. The world does not reward hidden capacity. It rewards visible value. And if you do not understand this, you will spend years waiting to be chosen. You will wait for the employer to finally notice your loyalty. You will wait for your family to finally validate your ambition. You will wait for the right client to discover your talent. You will wait for friends to share your work. You will wait for the room to open. And while you wait, men less intelligent than you will move faster because they understand something colder than motivation. They understand that proof travels faster than pain. The weak salesman begs for attention. The strong salesman creates certainty. The weak man tries to be liked. The strong man reduces risk. The weak man explains his potential. The strong man shows proof. That is the battlefield. A man who cannot sell is not just missing a skill. He is missing a route to freedom. Because when you cannot sell, you remain trapped inside dependence. You depend on your employer to price your value fairly. You depend on your family to believe in a future they cannot see. You depend on clients to somehow understand your ability without you making it clear. You depend on gatekeepers to open rooms you have not earned the power to enter. And dependency always has a cost. It costs you leverage. It costs you options. It costs you posture. It costs you the ability to walk away without panic. Your boss does not fear your frustration. He fears your alternatives. Your family does not revise their judgment because you explain yourself for the 100th time. They revise their judgment when your results make the old version of you expensive to believe. Your friends may like you, but liking you does not mean they respect your direction. People often like the man who asks for little, needs approval, and stays familiar. Respect begins when your value becomes visible enough to create consequence. Look at Sara Blakely. Before Spanx made her a billionaire, she was selling fax machines door to door. Forbes reported that she started Spanx with $5,000 saved from that sales job, and another Forbes profile notes that she was expected to sell $20,000 worth of fax machines each month, door to door. Understand the pressure. She had no empire, no inherited distribution, no machine behind her, no guaranteed applause waiting for her. She had to walk into rejection and survive the humiliation of being ignored. But that pressure was the training. She learned to explain value quickly. She learned to read discomfort. She learned that a buyer does not reward your dream. A buyer responds to a problem made clear, a result made visible, and a reason to act now. Her first proof was not a motivational speech, not a dream board, not a private identity. It was a product she could demonstrate, explain, and put in front of real buyers. That is power, not waiting to be discovered. Creating contact. Now look at Howard Schultz. Before Starbucks became a global brand, Schultz worked in sales. Time reported from Schultz's own memoir that after college he entered Xerox's sales training program, and Schultz said he learned more there than in college about work and business. That matters because before he sold coffee culture to the world, he learned how reality buys. Pressure. He came from a working-class background with no guaranteed path into elite business. Action. He entered sales, learned cold contact, learned persuasion, learned how buyers think, learned what moves people when attention is limited and trust is not automatic. First proof, not Starbucks. His first proof was commercial competence, the ability to enter a market, speak to strangers, survive rejection, and understand what creates movement. These are not soft stories. They are evidence. Sales punishes the fantasy version of you and trains the useful version of you. That is why the unsupported man should study sales like a prince studies war. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince ought to have no other aim or thought than war and its rules and discipline." For you, this does not mean violence, it means market conflict, competition, positioning, risk, discipline, attention, trust, money, proof, negotiation, alternatives. The battlefield is not a kingdom. It is the buyer's mind. It is the employer's incentive. It is the client's doubt. It is the market's indifference. It is the social cost of ignoring you. The man who refuses to study this battlefield remains unarmed. And in the modern world, being commercially unarmed looks like this. You have skill, but no offer. You have effort, but no proof. You have intelligence, but no distribution. You have ambition, but no buyer. You have pain, but no leverage. So your employer underpays you. Your family doubts you. Your friends ignore your work. The market passes you by. Not because you are worthless, because you are invisible. If you are the kind of man who knows he has value, but keeps hiding behind silent preparation, stop mistaking private effort for progress. You already know you need more freedom, but your problem is that your value has not become visible enough to create options. If you keep waiting until confidence appears before you make contact with the market, you will become older, more skilled, more bitter, and still dependent on someone else choosing you. Inside Patreon, you get deeper, unfiltered breakdowns on power, leverage, discipline, proof, and the psychology of becoming difficult to dismiss so you can turn private ambition into visible authority. This is not for men who want comfort. It is for men who are done asking permission. The decision is yours. Now here is the colder truth. Sales is not the art of making people buy what they do not need. That is cheap manipulation, and it creates resentment. Real sales is the art of seeing what people already need, fear, delay, misunderstand, or avoid, then making the cost of inaction visible. This is practical psychology. Human beings are not moved only by desire. They are moved by risk. Kahneman and Tversky's prospect theory is commonly summarized by the principle that losses loom larger than gains. Later behavioral decision research continues to discuss loss aversion as a major factor in human choice. This matters because most beginners sell the upside. Here is what you can gain. But powerful sales often begins with the hidden loss. What is this problem already costing you? What will 6 more months of delay destroy? What opportunity is leaking while you pretend this is not urgent? What status, money, time, or control are you losing by doing nothing? That is not manipulation. That is diagnosis. And diagnosis is power. Because the man who diagnoses clearly becomes more than a persuader. He becomes a mirror. He shows the buyer the cost they were avoiding. He makes confusion expensive. He turns vague discomfort into a clear problem. And once the problem is clear, action becomes more likely. That is why sales is not beneath the ambitious man. Sales is where ambition gets tested. Now understand the 8 powers. Sales gives an unsupported man, because if one of these powers is missing, your skill stays trapped inside you, your employer keeps the leverage, and the market never learns why you matter. Power 1. Market awareness. Sales forces you to stop guessing. Most unsupported men live inside private theories. They think they know what people need. They think they know what the market wants. They think effort will eventually speak. They think being serious in private will eventually become obvious in public. Sales destroys this fantasy. 2 men can build the same skill for 6 months. One studies in silence and guesses what people want. The other sends 10 offers, gets ignored, gets a few replies, asks questions, hears objections, tests language, studies what creates movement, and learns what pain is actually urgent. After 6 months, one man has theories. The other has market intelligence. That is the difference. Market awareness teaches you which problems people complain about, but refuse to pay for. It teaches you which words create interest and which words create silence. It teaches you when the buyer is curious, when he is afraid, when he is delaying, and when he is pretending politeness is progress. The unsupported man cannot afford to build blind. A man with support can waste time chasing vague ideas. A man with a safety net can spend years being confused. A man with family money can fail slowly and still be protected. But if nobody is coming to save you, guessing is expensive. Sales gives you contact with reality, not theory, not fantasy, not motivation, reality. You learn what people actually respond to. You learn what they ignore. You learn which pain is urgent and which pain is only emotional noise. You learn which problem has money behind it and which problem only has complaints behind it. Market awareness is the death of delusion. And once the market answers you, the next question is whether you can stay controlled. Power 2. Emotional control. Sales trains the nervous system. Cold outreach, rejection, follow-up, negotiation, silence, objections, delays, ghosting, price resistance, all of it touches the same wound, your need to be approved. The weak man hears no and translates it into, I am nothing. The disciplined man hears no and asks, what did reality reveal? Wrong buyer. Weak offer, unclear value, no urgency, missing proof, bad timing, poor positioning. Every rejection becomes intelligence. This is where sales becomes masculine training, not because it makes you loud, not because it makes you aggressive, not because it turns you into a performer. Sales becomes masculine training because it teaches you to remain steady while another person refuses you. Most men are not afraid of sales. They are afraid of what rejection will confirm. They are afraid that the silence means they were never as valuable as they imagined. They are afraid that the ignored message means their private ambition is fantasy. They are afraid that the buyer's hesitation is a verdict on their worth. But rejection is not always a verdict on identity. Sometimes rejection is a map. It shows you where your offer is weak. It shows you where your words are unclear. It shows you where your proof is missing. It shows you where your buyer is wrong. It shows you where your need for approval is still controlling your behavior. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved when one must choose between the two. In sales, do not misunderstand this. Your goal is not to make buyers fear you. Your goal is to stop being ruled by the fear of not being loved. A man who needs to be liked cannot negotiate cleanly. He discounts too fast. He over-explains. He chases dead leads. He tolerates disrespect. He mistakes politeness for progress. He confuses a friendly conversation with a serious opportunity. He turns follow-up into begging because he is trying to protect his ego instead of clarify the deal. Emotional control means you stop letting another person's hesitation become your identity. When a buyer says no, you do not collapse. You listen, you study, you adjust. You ask what was unclear. You examine whether the pain was real. You examine whether your proof was strong enough. You examine whether the timing was wrong. You improve the offer. The market is not insulting you. The market is training you. And when you can stay controlled under rejection, you gain something most men never build. You gain clean perception. You stop hearing every no as humiliation. You start hearing every no as information. That changes the man. Because the man who can be rejected without losing himself becomes dangerous, not violent, not cruel. Dangerous because he is no longer controlled by the cheapest weapon society uses against unsupported men: disapproval. Once you are controlled, the next question becomes sharper. Can you speak with precision when pressure is on? Power. 3. Communication precision. Sales teaches clarity under pressure. If you cannot say who you help, what pain you solve, what result you create, and why now, you do not have an offer, you have a wish. And most men hide behind wishes because wishes protect the ego. A vague man can always pretend he is deeper than people understand. A precise man has to be judged. That is why unsupported men often hide behind complexity. They say, I do marketing, I do content, I help brands grow. I am building something different. I have a vision. I am working on myself. I am trying to create value. Fog. Fog does not create trust. Fog gives your ego a place to hide. The market does not pay for fog. The market pays for clear movement from pain to result. Say this instead. I help this specific buyer solve this specific problem with this specific outcome. That sentence is dangerous because it removes your escape route. If the buyer does not care, you must face it. If the pain is not urgent, you must face it. If the outcome is not valuable, you must face it. If your proof is weak, you must face it. But that is exactly why sales builds power. It forces you to remove every vague sentence that makes you sound safe but useless. Clarity under pressure is not just a communication skill, it is a character test. Can you stop hiding behind impressive language? Can you say the offer plainly? Can you name the buyer without trying to serve everyone? Can you name the pain without trying to sound profound? Can you name the outcome without exaggerating? Can you name why now without manufacturing fake urgency? The man who communicates precisely becomes easier to trust because people can tell where he stands. They can tell what problem he understands. They can tell what result he is trying to create. Precision creates trust because it tells the buyer you understand the battlefield. And in a market full of noise, the clear man feels powerful, not because he is louder, because he is easier to believe. But clarity alone is not enough. The next question is sharper. If your words are precise, what proof supports them? Power 4. Proof creation. Sales punishes vague claims. That is why it is sacred. You can call yourself disciplined in private. Sales asks, where is the result? You can call yourself skilled. Sales asks, where is the case study? You can call yourself valuable. Sales asks, who has paid, replied, referred, improved, or committed because of your work? Proof is the language of reality. This is the part most unsupported men resist because it kills the fantasy that potential should be enough. Potential may comfort you. Proof moves other people. Potential lives in your head. Proof enters the room before you speak. Potential asks to be believed. Proof gives people a reason to update. And the market is not cruel for demanding proof. The market is protecting itself from risk. Every buyer has been disappointed before. Every employer has heard confident talk from average men. Every client has seen promises collapse. Every gatekeeper has learned that enthusiasm is cheap. So when you arrive with only passion, they do not hear destiny, they hear risk. Your job is not to complain about that. Your job is to reduce the risk, build proof assets. One audit, one teardown, one before and after, one testimonial, one mini case study, one demo, one measurable result, one clear portfolio page, one documented process, one public explanation of how you solved a problem, one visible example that makes your value easier to trust. The unsupported man must stop asking people to believe in a future he has not made visible. You may be underestimated, but you may also be unproven. Stop confusing the two. Build the evidence that reveals which one is true. This is where most men secretly lose. They want respect before proof. They want support before evidence. They want confidence before repetition. They want authority before demonstration. But reality works in the opposite direction. Repeated action creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. Confidence improves communication. Communication creates trust. Trust creates opportunity. Opportunity creates leverage. This is why proof creation is not optional. Without proof, your ambition has no body. It is a ghost. And ghosts do not negotiate. They haunt themselves. Once you have proof, the next question becomes unavoidable. Can you stop begging? Power 5. Negotiation power. A man who can sell has options. A man with options negotiates differently. He does not walk into the room hoping to be saved. He walks in knowing he can leave. This is what employers fear. Not your anger, not your opinions, not your private resentment, your alternatives. Your boss can survive your frustration. He can ignore your complaints. He can nod through your disappointment. He can compliment your loyalty and still underpay your value. But alternatives change the room. When you can create income outside one gatekeeper, the gatekeeper loses psychological control. This is why sales is not just money. Sales is optionality. Optionality changes posture. You speak differently when you have pipeline. You price differently when you have demand. You tolerate less when you can replace the room. A man without options asks, will they choose me? A man with options asks, is this worth my commitment? That is a different nervous system. That is a different walk. That is a different relationship with power. Most unsupported men do not negotiate badly because they are stupid. They negotiate badly because they are trapped. They need the job too much. They need the client too much. They need the approval too much. They need the relationship too much. So they accept weak terms and call it patience. They tolerate disrespect and call it maturity. They lower their price and call it being realistic. They stay in dead rooms and call it loyalty. No. Sometimes loyalty is just fear with a noble costume. Sales gives you a weapon against that fear. Not because it guarantees wealth, because it proves you can create movement outside the cage. One client changes posture. One paid project changes self-respect. One repeatable offer changes your relationship with employment. One proof asset that attracts attention changes the way you see your own value. And once you know you can create alternatives, negotiation becomes cleaner. You no longer need to dominate the room. You only need the strength to leave it. That is why sales is power. Not because it makes people obey you, because it makes you less dependent on their permission. And when money starts moving, something else happens. People update their judgment. Power. 6. Status reversal. When your skill creates money, people update their judgment. Not because they became noble, because evidence changed the social cost of dismissing you. This is uncomfortable, but it is real. Your family may love you and still judge your future through your past. Your friends may support you verbally and still treat your work like a hobby. Your employer may praise your reliability and still underpay your value. People are not always evil for doing this. They are responding to the evidence they can see. And Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. People respond to what appears real. Visible proof changes perception. Perception changes treatment. Treatment changes access. This is why explaining yourself usually fails. The more you explain your ambition before proof, the more you may sound like a man asking for permission to believe in himself. But when proof appears, explanation becomes less necessary. A paid client speaks. A visible result speaks. A strong portfolio speaks. A repeated outcome speaks. A public reputation speaks. Money is not the only proof, but it is one of the loudest forms of proof because it shows that another person found your value strong enough to exchange resources for it. That changes the story. The old version of you becomes harder to maintain. The family member who dismissed your ambition now has to reconcile their judgment with evidence. The friend who treated your work like a hobby now has to decide whether ignoring it still feels safe. The employer who assumed your dependency now has to consider that you may have other rooms. Do not resent this. Use it. Most people will not update because you are wounded. They update because the visible cost of being wrong increases. That is the law. Build so clearly that people are forced to update, not by your speech, by your evidence. If you are the kind of man who has been trying to prove your future with explanations, stop calling that progress. You already know people respond to proof, but your real problem is that you keep using words where evidence is required. If you keep explaining before building, you will become the man with reasons instead of results. Inside Patreon, you get deeper exclusive work on building proof, positioning your value, controlling perception, and turning discipline into leverage, so you can stop asking to be understood and start becoming impossible to dismiss. This is not for spectators. It is for men who are ready to become evidence. The decision is yours. Once people update, a new question appears. What doors can a man open when he stops waiting outside them? Power 7. Opportunity creation. Sales allows you to create doors instead of waiting outside them. A job is sold. A client is sold. A partnership is sold. A referral is sold. A raise is sold. An audience is sold. A vision is sold. A vision is sold. Not always with money first. but always with perceived value. Every opportunity begins with contact. The unsupported man who refuses outreach is asking the world to discover him without evidence. That is not strength. That is passive pride. And passive pride is one of the most expensive weaknesses a man can carry. It sounds noble in the mind. I do not chase. I do not beg. I let the work speak. But often, underneath that language, there is fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of beginner status. Fear of looking ordinary. Fear that the work will speak and nobody will care. So the man stays hidden. He polishes. He prepares. He plans. He consumes more information. He tells himself he is waiting for the right time, the right confidence, the right network, the right opportunity. But opportunity usually does not arrive as a rescue. Opportunity is manufactured through surface area. Send the work, publish the insight, make the offer, ask for the call, request the referral, enter the conversation. Follow up with dignity. Document the result. Repeat the process. You do not need a perfect network. You need a proof asset and a distribution habit. A hidden man remains at the mercy of luck. A visible man manufactures surface area for opportunity. This does not mean you spam people. This does not mean you become desperate. This does not mean you perform fake confidence. It means you stop treating contact as humiliation. Contact is not humiliation. Contact is how value enters reality. If your message is clear, if your proof is visible, if your offer is specific, if your buyer is relevant, outreach is not begging. It is strategic exposure. You are placing value where value can be recognized. The market cannot reward what it cannot see, so the unsupported man must become visible without becoming needy. That is the balance. Cold contact with control. Follow up without desperation. Offer without apology. Proof without exaggeration. Presence without performance. This is how opportunity begins. Not by waiting for someone to finally notice the man you imagine yourself to be. By becoming visible enough that the right people have a reason to respond. And when this is repeated long enough, it becomes something deeper than opportunity. It becomes sovereignty. Power 8. Sovereignty. Sales converts skill into income. Income creates surplus. Surplus creates runway. Runway creates freedom. Freedom gives you time to build assets, refuse bad rooms, escape dependency, negotiate from strength, and stop asking permission from people who do not control the path. This is sovereignty. Not fantasy independence. Not pretending you need no one. Not isolating yourself until you become bitter. Not turning every relationship into a power game. Real sovereignty is structural. You have skill, you have proof, you have buyers, you have income, you have savings, you have options, you have discipline, you have evidence. That is what power looks like in the market. Quiet, measurable, difficult to dismiss. The immature man thinks sovereignty means never needing anyone. The strategic man understands sovereignty. Means never becoming helpless under one person, one employer, one client, one platform, one room, one gatekeeper, or one source of approval. There is a difference. A man who needs no one is often lying to himself. A man with options can cooperate without surrendering. That is power. Because dependency corrupts perception. When you need the job too much, you misread exploitation as opportunity. When you need the client too much, you confuse disrespect with negotiation. When you need family approval too much, you keep explaining instead of building. When you need friends to validate your ambition, you let familiar people become the ceiling of your imagination. Sales breaks this because sales creates contact with the market. And the market, as cold as it is, gives cleaner feedback than the people emotionally attached to your old identity. Your family sees your past. Your friends see your current rank. Your employer sees your replaceable function. The market sees whether your value solves a problem. That is why sales is initiation. It forces the unsupported man to stop building his identity on imagined potential and start building it on repeated evidence. So, kill the old belief. The old belief says, when people understand me, they will support me. The strategic belief says, when I create proof, the right people will have a reason to respond. The old belief says, rejection means I am not enough. The strategic belief says, rejection reveals where my offer is unclear, my proof is weak, or my buyer is wrong. The old belief says, sales is begging. The strategic belief says, sales is controlled contact with reality. The old belief says, if I work hard enough in silence, the world will eventually notice. The strategic belief says, hidden value is often treated as non-existent value. The old belief says, I need confidence before I make the offer. The strategic belief says, confidence is built by surviving contact with reality and improving after each verdict. You are not selling because you are desperate. You are selling because you refuse to remain dependent on invisible value. You are selling because the unsupported man cannot afford to wait for discovery. You are selling because every offer is a weapon against helplessness. You are selling because the market respects proof more than pain. And once you understand that, sales stops being humiliating. It becomes initiation. But there is one final danger. A man can learn sales and still remain weak if he uses it only to chase money. Money is not the highest purpose of sales. Power is. Because money without discipline disappears. Money without proof becomes performance. Money without leverage becomes another paycheck. The real question is not, can you close? The real question is, can you build a machine where skill becomes proof, proof becomes trust, trust becomes income, and income becomes freedom? That machine begins with one move. Choose one skill. Choose one painful problem. Choose one buyer. Choose one offer. Build one proof asset. Then send it before your fear starts negotiating with your future. Do not wait until you feel ready. Readiness is often fear wearing the mask of preparation. Do not wait until your family understands. Their understanding is not the engine. Do not wait until your friends support you. Their support is not the market. Do not wait until your employer values you correctly. Their incentive may be to keep your value cheap. Do not wait until confidence arrives. Confidence follows evidence. Make contact. Study the response. Sharpen the offer. Build proof. Create options. Repeat until your private ambition has public evidence. That is the law. Sales is not begging. Sales is controlled contact with reality. Sales is not manipulation. Sales is diagnosis under pressure. Sales is not performance. Sales is disciplined perception. Sales is not a job title. Sales is the survival skill of the man with no safety net. Because if you cannot turn a problem into value, value into proof, and proof into money, then your freedom remains theoretical. And theoretical freedom does not pay bills. It does not create savings. It does not build leverage. It does not protect you from bad rooms. It does not make your employer negotiate differently. It does not make the market discover you. It does not make your future visible. So do not ask to be believed. Become evidence. But understand the next danger. If you choose the wrong offer, discipline will only make you fail slower. If you sell to the wrong buyer, effort becomes exhaustion. If you solve a problem nobody urgently feels, clarity will not save you. If you build proof for a market that does not care, you will become precise and still ignored. The next law is learning what to sell first when nobody knows your name. Nobody trusts you yet, and nobody is coming to save you. Until then, build the proof. Send the offer. Let rejection train your perception. Let silence sharpen your words. Let proof replace explanation. Let options replace dependency. Let the market teach you where power actually begins. Do not ask to be chosen. Build until choosing you becomes rational. Build anyway.